I'd like to start this talk by telling you that I'm a very foundational thinker. I'm very interested in not so much the why that guides our actions, but the foundational thought that leads to the why that leads to our actions. It sounds really complicated, but I'm really just interested in the basics that guide our lives. And so it makes absolute, complete sense that one of the basic foundational ideas that guides my life in leadership comes from one of my favorite Disney Pixar movies of all time. This is A Bug's Life. What I would argue is one of the greatest Disney Pixar movies of all time. Yes, I said Disney Pixar because the greatest Disney movie is The Lion King. This is not debatable. You think it is, but it's not. So Disney Pixar released A Bug's Life. They released A Bug's Life in 1998. And now that I'm older, I realize why I liked it so much, because its foundational theme is actually about a marginalized group, ants, who rise up and fight against the oppressive group, grasshoppers, who through economic disparity and terroristic threats of fear seek to control them. And in this scene, this one scene, Hopper, the grand poobah of villains in villainy, tells Princess Ada one thing that changed my life. He looks her in the face and he said, "Someone else's fault? No. First rule of leadership, everything is your fault." And it stuck with me through all my years of tweendom up until today. And it's probably the foundational reason of why this talk makes me so nervous, because I'm not here to talk about leadership, I'm here to talk about social justice. And there's something from this talk that I want you to get, something from this talk actually that I need you to get. And something inside of me is still telling me that whether or not you get it, no, it's my fault. Maybe that's something people disagree with, and maybe that's a foundational thought that I'll grow out of one day. But for now, we're going to talk about another foundational thought of my childhood that actually becomes quite a simple, profound illustration of social justice. I'm going to talk about the seesaw. Yes, the seesaw, the teeter-totter, the up-down thing that, apart from the swing set, has got to be one of the most popular playground toys. You get on it, you go down, you go up, then you go down, then you go up, then you go down, then you go up. It's kind of like life, right? You go down, then you go up, you go down, then you go up, right? But what if we were to take the seesaw out of the playground and into the world of social justice? You can do it, because ask my friends, you can take anything and place it into the world of social justice. So we have a seesaw. Two people playing, going down and up and down and down and up. But if you remember being on the bottom of the seesaw, it's really uncomfortable. Your feet can't really move around. You're not sure what's going on around you because you're down so down low, in fact, that you're not able to see what's going on the rest of the playground, right? It's kind of like an oppressed identity. Now, if you look at the top of the seesaw, being at the top of the seesaw was great. Your legs could move around, you were free, you could even wave your hand up a little bit, and you had such a good view of the playground, in fact, that you could see other opportunities that lay ahead for you. Hey, that swing just opened up, I'm gonna go grab that now. So what if you take it further? The bottom of the seesaw is very much like an oppressed identity. Not being able to move freely, not being able to see freely the opportunities that may lie ahead, even though they're definitely there. Being at the top of the seesaw is much like a privileged identity. Being able to see constantly, consistently, far and wide what lies ahead for you, so much so that you have more of a chance for that opportunity that lies ahead in the world. So now, the middle of the seesaw then becomes the system in which we all live. The system could be the world, or the system could be yourself. Because in this long fight of social justice, we learn that there's not only a seesaw within the world, but there's a seesaw within ourselves. because the direct definition for a seesaw is an alternating up and down or backward and forward motion or movement, a contest or struggle in which now one side and now the other has the lead. In your fight to make this world a more socially equitable and just place, it's hard because you realize that not only is there a seesaw in the world, there's a seesaw within you. You're constantly dealing with oppressive and privileged identities within yourself. And one side of you always has the lead. And the problem comes in social justice is that there's always a drastic lead between one identity and the next. And there's one identity that remains on the top of the seesaw for a lot longer than others. So how do we fix this? How do we use the seesaw to make this world more equitable and just for everyone? How do we do that despite fighting the seesaw that lies within ourselves every single day? Well, to do that, I had to take it to a realm that I don't know too much about: science. Science actually works well in describing the seesaw from the social justice world. It also works in my idea of the foundational definitions of life, because the seesaw, at the end of the day, is foundationally what you would call a class 1 lever. And I was really confused reading this part of my speech to my little sister, and she laughed and she said, "I learned that in 7th grade." I'm sure you did. So now then, we have the force of the privileged identity, we have the load of the oppressed identity, and we have the fulcrum, which exists as the world around us. And from this picture, from this lever, from this illustration of the seesaw as social justice, there's only one way then to make the world a more socially equitable and just place. There's only one way for the seesaw to work within the context of social justice. The privileged identities must use their force to leverage the weight of the oppressed to rise and create a balance. I'm going to switch and talk a little bit about the oppressed identity, about the identity on the bottom of the seesaw. And I usually don't do this, and I really had a hard time working it into my discussion, because usually social justice talks go wrong right about here, because they end up about a lecture of what the oppressed group could be doing better, and at the end of the day, the seesaw effect shows that that's not working. But I need to tell the person on the bottom of the seesaw, the identity on the bottom of the seesaw, that there's a very important thing that you must not be afraid to do when you're on the seesaw. You must not be afraid to take your feet off the ground. I remember being the person on the bottom of the seesaw, wanting to take my feet up the ground, and I was like, oh no, there's very real risk I could get hurt. What if I lean too far to the left and I fall this way? If I lean too far to the right, I'll fall this way. If I lean too far to the back, I'll bust my head wide open on the concrete. If I lean too far forward, I might hit the bar on my stomach and throw up. What if I lose a shoe? What if I lose both my shoes? I'm just going to stay on the bottom. Despite the very real risk, despite the very real anxiety, despite the very real fear, I'm begging the oppressed identity not to be afraid to let your feet off the ground. Back to the privileged identity. I remember being on the top of the seesaw, and whenever someone told me to get off or slow down because someone else should get on, I freaked out. I wasn't having it. Absolutely not. I worked my way to the top of this seesaw. I didn't fall asleep in Miss Keene's class. I didn't fall asleep in Miss Harris's math class, and I got through double-digit division. I didn't go to sleep in science. I slept a lot in school. I didn't go to sleep through lunch. I made it through chocolate milk and that square-shaped pizza. I ran out of the door. I may or may not have pushed anybody out of my way. It's not confirmed or denied. I got to the top of the seesaw by myself. I got here. I made it here. And now I'm on top and you telling me I have to move? Absolutely not. Privilege is a very scary space. It's a very fragile space. Because I was also the privileged person at the top of the seesaw who was very paranoid about the process of balance. Because I just knew that the person on the bottom was going to one day get tired of being on the bottom and just get up and leave me tumbling down. See, a lot of people, they say they want change, right? But really what they mean is, I want the kind of change that's going to allow me to stay exactly the same. So this shifting on the seesaw, not for me. Can't do it. But friends, that is the only way that social justice works in the context of the seesaw. That is the only way that equity works in the context of the seesaw. The privileged identities must shift to lift the load of the oppressed and create a balance. And I say balance because when we think of balancing and we think of a seesaw, we think of this picture. It was the only picture that I could find, and even still, it did not quite convey what social justice means by balance, because what you see here is an equal shift, a 50-50, very static balance. That's not how a seesaw works, though, is it? Because eventually, you'll find those two kids on the playground that have figured out that they want to play the game of balance, and they make it there, and they actually figure out how to balance. But if you've ever seen two kids balance on a seesaw, they don't get this. They get this. A wave that ebbs and flows not equally, but equitably. Guys, social justice is not about some static 50-50 brand of equality. It is about a constant, consistent ebb and flow of equity. We are not static people in static systems. So static is not healthy. The key to equity, the key to making this seesaw work is understanding that the seesaw within the world and the seesaw within yourself will always ebb and flow. But how much it ebbs and flows, how much the privileged identities are on top, and how far the oppressed identities are on the bottom, that all depends on us. That all depends on our ability to seek a more equitable and just world. And if I can get one person in here to use the seesaw to create an equitable and just world, then maybe social justice isn't just some crazy thing I made up on a playground. Thank you all so much.